Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 10 tight end rankings. And it's a really saturated tight end market. A lot of you probably don't need help, but nonetheless, I am here just in case with my rankings, with my projections, and you can always find those projections and rankings also up on the website, www.theFFforge.com, where they do get updated when big things come out through the week. And I also have a Saturday update video. And of course, you can come and join me 1 hour, 1.5 hours prior to kickoff for the main slate of the football games on Sunday, the NFL games. So about 11:30 Eastern time. Before we get to the Week 10 rankings, however, we do need to check out how I did with my Week 9 DFS suggestions and, of course, my love 'em and my fade 'em from last week. And you will get my DFS suggestions for this week at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. And when it does come to how I did last week, I did really well, so hopefully I can back this up again. I gave you the name Dalton Kincaid for a good buy at 3,700 DK bucks, and Dalton Kincaid scored 16.1 points. He was the tight end 7, so that worked out pretty well, but we can do better. So in the discount bin, I gave you Cade Otton at 3,000 DK bucks, so even less. And I said that I had a feeling that that game could pop off for a combined greater than 60 points between the two teams. And I was right on with that one. And Cade Otton definitely took advantage of that with his 23 fantasy points, which put him at the tight end 3 for full PPR, which is what DK is. And then for the contrarian play, I gave you Jake Ferguson at $4,000. I said people would probably be flying to Dalton Kincaid because he was less expensive, he's the hot commodity, etc., and overlooking Jake Ferguson, and I was right. I don't know if I was right on him being a contrarian play. I didn't look at the usage, but I was correct on him being a good play at 4,000 because he ended up as the tight end 4. He did outscore Dalton Kincaid with his 22.1 fantasy points, so I'm just going to give myself a little pat on the back for my tight ends last week. However, when it comes to my love 'em and my fade 'em, they both scored about the same amount of fantasy points. I did good with my fade 'em because they both sucked. Trey McBride was my fade. He had 3.7 fantasy points, and Gerald Everett was my love at 3.8, so that did not work out at all. Let's move on to my Week 10 rankings. And now up on the screen, you can see my top 11 tight ends, my first tier of tight ends. These are my must-starts. Like I said, it's a saturated market for the tight end. So if you've got these guys, you're playing them. If you have 2 of them, this is the order that I would suggest you play them currently. There is one change that I'm looking at. So there's not a whole lot to cover for the tight ends this week, so I will just say first off the bat, Sam Laporta at the tight end 1. Mark Andrews is playing Cleveland, although he did do very well. I'll cover that later against them the last time you saw them. I still feel really good about Sam Laporta going up against the Chargers in what should be a shootout of a game between those two teams. A little more comfortable with that than Mark Andrews, once again, going up against a really tough tight end opponent. TJ Hockenson, we continue to see him get the targets. Dalton Schultz going up against Cincinnati. This is where I might end up making a change between him and Dalton Kincaid. This was obviously a close one to begin with. And I think part of my tiebreaker for Dalton Schultz was just that I expected that Houston and Cincinnati to be a high-scoring affair as well. But with the injuries to the wide receivers for Cincinnati, I'm not so confident in that. And so I would like to see what ends up happening between those guys as far as the injury report, the expectations of them playing, before I might make some adjustments. That might cause me to make some adjustments, essentially, with my rankings between those two. Then Evan Ingram's a really safe play this week. San Francisco is actually pretty good against the tight end position, quite good. However, there's one interesting little tidbit. They allow a lot of targets. Like, teams target the tight end a lot, and that's why you see this floor so high for Evan Ingram. The highest, not technically a floor, but highest lower end of the expected range here out of all of my tight ends. What it comes down to is this. If you're going to tell me that Evan Ingram's going to get like 8 targets in this game, obviously the reason that San Francisco, despite the tight ends getting targeted a lot, is so good against the tight end is they haven't allowed a whole lot of touchdowns to them, and the yards per reception are obviously going to be quite low as well. It's the only reason that they would be so low on the chart compared to how many tight end targets that they allow. And so if you're going to give 6-8 targets to Evan Ingram, I'll play him all day. And he's not really a low ADOT guy, so I would think that he could change the numbers a little bit for San Francisco going forward and have a good week. Very possible. Then George Kittle, I think super, super risky play. I'd probably like to put him lower if everybody's healthy there. I think he could be blocking, so I might have to lower him. It seems like, once again, super risky play. Trey McBride going up against Atlanta. I think we can expect a return to good Trey McBride, and he's going to have Kyler Murray back, and we've seen Kyler Murray target last season the tight end position quite a bit. Taysom Hill, obviously, he's Taysom Hill. You play him if you got him. You got him to play him. And Logan Thomas, I like him a lot. It's a loaded class, and so I ended up taking what I think is a slightly safer option in Taysom Hill, although that could be argued. And then at tight end 11, I have Jake Ferguson, and as you can see from the player temperature gauge there, things are not working in favor of him having a big game, and that's because just not really expecting them to have to utilize the passing attack a whole lot against New York. We obviously saw week 1, I believe it was, Dallas dismantle the Giants and didn't need much from their offense. I do believe, though, in that game, Jake Ferguson had 2 big drops, maybe both of them even touchdown drops. So, just because there's not going to be a whole lot of opportunities, there still will be some opportunities, at least early on in the game, for Jake Ferguson to take advantage of. So I still think he's a must-play, despite being a limited amount of opportunities that he'll probably have to bring in a good day for you. Let's look at the second tier of tight ends, the rest of the guys that you could play if need be. And at tight end 12, we have Cole Kmet, and it's not a good tight end matchup for him going up against Carolina, per se, and I say that because, usually teams just run a lot against Carolina. Usually teams are just clearly better than Carolina. Well, Chicago's still going to have Bagent in at quarterback. I don't know that they're clearly better than Carolina, so I think we can expect more of a neutral matchup than what we normally see against Carolina, and thus Chicago could be passing quite a bit more. And Kmet is averaging 9 targets and 8 receptions over the past 2 weeks with Bagent at quarterback, so I think we could probably expect something like that to happen again. Then at tight end 13, I have Kyle Pitts, and at tight end 14, I have Jonnu Smith, who is my fade. So on a weekly basis, Jonnu Smith has been the tight end number 7 on the season so far. Same could not be said for Kyle Pitts, yet I have Kyle Pitts ranked ahead of Jonnu Smith. I think I did the same thing last week, and I think it was maybe for a similar reason. Maybe that was 2 weeks ago, I don't know. But Arizona is actually not a very good tight end matchup, and so Jonnu Smith is a fade because he is the tight end on this team. Kyle Pitts is a tight end, but Kyle Pitts rarely lines up in line as a traditional tight end. Most of the time, he's in the slot or he is out wide when he lines up. And so the Arizona is a much better matchup when you think of what the wide receivers do in terms of the fantasy points allowed to that position. And I think Kyle Pitts fits better into that category. So I would bet on Kyle Pitts out of the two, and I'm not expecting a big game from Jonnu Smith, but he has been, once again, the number 7 tight end on the season so far at per week basis. At tight end 15, we have David Njoku. Baltimore is a really tough tight end matchup. Bottom 3 is that simple, and it's going to be that simple for a few more of these guys in this tier. These are this tier of tight ends are still good tight end options, but more susceptible to the matchup just tanking their stock, in my opinion. At tight end 16, we have Cade Otton, and Tennessee is also quite tough. Bottom 5, he's been kind of on fire. It's been a good few weeks. I saw it. I thought he was a good DFS option last week to take a gamble on. Worked out. I'm not so high on him this week. At tight end 17, we have Hunter Henry. It's an okay matchup against the Indianapolis Colts, but Hunter's just been really tough to trust. He's been up and down. It's a tight end 22 on the season. So, once again, tough to trust. Tight end 18, we have Luke Musgrave. Pittsburgh is the second toughest tight end matchup. What's the reason for optimism here? Why is he even playable, in my opinion? Well, Pittsburgh does allow the most yards per reception in the league, and attacking teams down the seam is supposed to be part of Luke Musgrave's profile. And I think early on in the season, we saw the Green Bay Packers utilize that portion of what Luke Musgrave can do a fair bit. They had him on deeper routes. Since then, they've gotten a little more conservative on offense, and we have seen the average ADOT for Luke Musgrave tank. He's now has the 6th highest ADOT amongst tight ends, 16th highest ADOT amongst tight ends. So nothing special. He's just amongst the average for tight ends in terms of ADOT. But maybe they will see something in this Pittsburgh defense that they could attack deep with Luke Musgrave to get a touchdown last week. And this offense is better with Aaron Jones back. So maybe that'll just help things be a little bit smoother going forward. Then at tight end 19, we have Gerald Everett going up against Detroit. Detroit is a better matchup than they had last week. Last week, Gerald Everett was a love him for me. Did not work out. I'm going back to the same well this week with Gerald Everett. Trying it again. It's the Detroit is the number 4 matchup for tight ends, best matchup for tight ends. So I'm trying it again, banking on it. Let's go Gerald Everett, and that's brings you to there's my final tier. I'll just leave that on the screen in case you are looking at playing from that group of players. While I go over my DFS buys for this week, let's see if I can't do excellent again. So for a good buy, Sam Laporta at $5,300. I think is a great buy. He is my number 1 tight end on the week. This is just looking, by the way, at the Sunday slate of games for that lineup. And so, yeah, I think that Sam Laporta has a good shot at being the tight end number 1 on the week, and you can get him at the 3rd least most expensive option. So a little bit of a discount for him as well. And it's not going to hurt the rest of your lineup paying $5,300 for a tight end. In the discount bin, I have Irv Smith Jr. at $2,700 DK bucks. The wide receivers for Cincinnati are quite banged up. Both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase could be out, so especially in that event. But either way, I think this could be the week where we see Irv Smith do something if there ever will be that kind of week. And then in the contrarian spot here, I'm going to give you a Mark Andrews at $6,900 DK bucks. Cleveland is the worst tight end matchup, and it's really not very close. They've been excellent against tight ends all season long. The thing is, that's on average. Back in week 4, Mark Andrews had his biggest week of the season against the Cleveland Browns when he put up 22.5 half PPR fantasy points. And so, maybe they've just got Cleveland's number with Mark Andrews. That's very possible, and I'm hoping that will repeat. So that is it for my tight ends. I'll see you on Saturday, and of course, hope to see you for the start-sit questions on Sunday. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.